Hello, my fine feathered friends. I am going to make the assumption that if you have clicked on this video, you have pushed yourself too deep into the rabbit hole of, well, what college should I go to? Meaning you are either an overambitious 14-year-old or, hopefully more likely, a senior or junior in high school trying to figure out what you're going to do for the next 4 years. I tried college for 6 months. It didn't work for me. But with that knowledge, I am hoping to be able to bestow onto you some things I have learned that I wish I had known, not only before I applied for college, but before I went. What I'm going to start with today is, what were my statistics? You know, what was my SAT score and my ACT score, and how many APs did I take? Calm down, first of all. You want to know if I am worthy to give you this information. It's therefore I will give you what I know you want. I went to college prep school, and I graduated with a 3.14 GPA, but I applied to colleges with a 2.92 GPA. I took one AP course, which was 2 semesters, one post-AP course, which was 1 semester, 6 advanced courses, which was 6 semesters in total, 8 art classes, 9 semesters in total, 5 literature courses, 8 semesters in total, 2 math courses, 4 semesters in total, 1 year of Spanish, 3 years of Latin, 7 science classes, 9 semesters in total, 5 social studies classes, 5 semesters total, 1 semester of health class, 1 semester of communications, and 25 college prep classes, which was 37 semesters in total. Besides that, in terms of activities, I was the co-chair my senior year of Creative Writing Club, I was in Robotics Club for 1 year, I did theater for 4 shows, I wrote and directed a 1-act play, and I wrote 2 opinions columns for the school newspaper. And I also took a summer-long Intro to Screenwriting course. That was at the time. Is all of that good? No, like the GPA probably, isn't the best, but there were other things in there that are substantial and helpful. If any of that speaks to you and you're like, I did robotics for 1 year and I'm a theater kid. Hi, welcome. I will tell you where I applied and why I don't think I made good choices, and you can learn from me. Outside of that, what was I looking for? First of all, I want to study film. I wanted to at the time, and I still do. I also wanted to minor in education, which has since changed since I have learned that I am not the best with children, but that's okay. What I was looking for in 2023-2024 was a strong film program and an education minor. I was also looking for a smaller student population, because although I'm an extrovert, that's a lot of people. I don't want to go somewhere with like 30,000 people. I wanted a majority queer community, and I want to go to a small liberal arts school or an otherwise weird school like an alternative university. That being said, I did apply to public universities and also large public universities, so if you want my thoughts on those, I will also give them. I also wanted positive relationships between students and faculty, and I also ideally wanted it in a suburb because I have never lived in a city on my own. And so I wanted to, ease into things, but I also wanted there to be a nearby film network. So I didn't want to be directly in the heat of a city, but close to one that had a film network. I'm also going to mention which videos I applied to and visited, and some I both applied to and visited, and some I only did one or the other. Let's start out with the South. The first colleges I ever visited were Savannah College of Art and Design, Savannah, and Savannah College of Art and Design, Atlanta. They're both art schools that are highly acclaimed if you're not in Georgia, from my understanding. They're both large, I will say, but they're both art schools with strong film programs, which is what drew me to them in the first place. But the more I grew to understand Savannah College of Art and Design, the more I understood the problems with it, such as the fact that the film program is highly competitive within it. Not like, who's gonna get into the program, but okay, you're in, and now you're competing with one another, which for me isn't a great sign when film is predominantly a collaborative field. You can't be super competitive with all of your peers if you truly want to succeed. I have a mentor who also knows people who've worked at SCAD who had incredibly negative experiences, and they gentrified Savannah, Georgia. You can read up on it. It's a whole thing. You can also just feel it when you're in Savannah that, this entire historic town is really just SCAD, which isn't great. It's not a college town feel. There were colleges I toured that were in college towns, and it feels like there's okay, this is just part of the community. It doesn't feel like the college is the city. So I think that's a very big difference. That was something that sort of pushed me off from it. I didn't end up applying to SCAD, but again, I did visit both of the campuses. Then Richmond University in Virginia. I applied, but I never visited. I didn't have any intention of actually going to Richmond, and I'm going to guess that did read through my application, which is part of why I got denied. That and the fact that I'm just not a Richmond person, if that makes sense. My academics were not up to par with what Richmond was looking for, but I applied because they fit some of my qualifications, such as the fact that they're a liberal arts college, and they have a film program and an education minor. That was about it. I'm not really good sorts on anything Richmond, but, it's out there. You can apply. Now, the West. I applied to one school in the West, and that was Montana State University. It's a public university with a large student population in Bozeman, Montana. They have a strong film program, and I did get accepted, even though I didn't visit, and I ended up getting a scholarship. I looked to try to figure out what the scholarship was, but I could not find it. If I'm remembering correctly, of the schools that gave me scholarships, it was the lowest, but they got back to me after I applied within like a week or two, which was really, really nice. A big part of the reason I applied is because I have family in Montana, so it was reasonable on that end. I'd be close to people who I knew, but I didn't go because I've been to Montana before, and as much as I love it, I'm not a huge Bozeman person. I find it to be sort of vast. Most people love it. Most people adore Bozeman. I like Missoula more. Okay. East Coast. The colleges I applied to within the East Coast were in two states, Massachusetts and New York. We're going to start with Massachusetts, because one of the New York colleges is where I ended up going, and so I have what you would say opinions. I did not visit either of the colleges in Massachusetts, but I did go to Massachusetts for spring break. So I know what it is. I understand the concept. I just didn't actually tour any of the colleges. Okay, starting out strong-ish with Emerson, which is in Boston. It's an art school, I would say, but it's not like SCAD in the sense where everyone's doing these really creative fields. There are more liberal arts adjacent majors. Okay, I'm sorry. I've written my notes down, and I used a light green pen for this, so I'm sorry if I pause a lot, because, oh lordy, I can't read this. Okay, I withdrew my application before hearing back from Emerson. I had committed to a school already, and I had just been struggling to figure out where in their portal I could withdraw my application. Part of the reason I withdrew was not only because I'd committed to another school, but because of their treatment of pro-Palestinian protesters. I know too much about the Vietnam War protests. I know better than dealing with colleges who don't treat protesters well. Protesters who are their own students, especially. I'm not touching that. Then I applied to Hampshire. I am a Hampshire enthusiast. If you heard me say earlier, oh, she wanted to go to weird school, listen to me when I say, look into Hampshire. Look into Hampshire College. They're a very small alternative liberal arts school in Western Massachusetts. I've not heard a singular bad word about this school. I had heard about them on my own, and then a faculty member at my high school had gone to Hampshire and just raved about it. They have really unique courses in curriculum structure, which I was really drawn to. It is also pretty much guaranteed that you'll get a single dorm because of how small they are. I believe they have a farm. I'm like 99% sure they have the farm, which is really cool. I also got a $31,000 per year scholarship from them, which is the highest scholarship I got, which is just, why didn't I go? If I was smart, like truly, I would have picked Hampshire College over where I ended up going. I have probably still ended up leaving the college? Yes, because I don't think the typical 4-year college structure is for me. That being said, I think I would have stayed a whole year, and I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did where I went. Before we really get into the New York colleges, I would like to give 2 honorable mentions to colleges I visited. AKA, on my New York college tour, I was meant to visit these colleges, but my mom and I drove by them and were like, oh, that wouldn't be good for her at all. And those 2 colleges are Syracuse and Ithaca. Syracuse is just too big. That's the whole thing. It's too big. It was overwhelming. Ithaca is, besides the school being fugly, the city it is in, oh wow. She's not looking great. To the point where it's like, it doesn't feel, I wouldn't say it feels unsafe, like, community-wise. It feels unsafe, like, it looks like every structure is about to fall down all of a sudden. It looks like what I imagine 1980s Russia looked like. So, yeah, those are my honorable mentions. Let's start out with the college that I didn't visit in New York, Bard. It's fine. I haven't heard anything great about it. I haven't heard anything awful about it. That being said, they have a strong film program. I applied early action. I applied early for all of the colleges. I was deferred and then later accepted with no scholarship. Bard is, again, like, Bard, I'm just, whatever. It's pretty. It's pretty. Every photo you see of it, it's beautiful. Beautiful college. Beautiful. But is that enough? No. Because you shouldn't be picking colleges merely on whether or not they're pretty. I know I said the whole thing about Ithaca College. But a lot of that was also the town, so you can't hate me too much. Bard also employs Neil Gaiman, which, if you don't know who Neil Gaiman is, just know he's not a great person. No, he's not a great person. Now, one of the few colleges that I both visited and applied to, and ended up going to, Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, New York. I applied early decision. I was deferred, and then I was accepted. And, again, should have picked Hampshire. That gave me the $31,000 a year scholarship, but alas, I did not. I chose the really, really expensive college that didn't give me a scholarship. Great. Again, I attended for 6 months before leaving, because that school's actual hell. And I know I'm kind of silly. I know I joke, but there is a part of me that, despite not being a religious person, believes that Sarah Lawrence College could be actual hell. If I die and go to hell and it's Sarah Lawrence, I'd be like, no, that checks out. There were a lot of reasons I picked Sarah Lawrence. They have a strong film program, good education program, you can get your master's in the art of teaching there. It's a majority queer school. Seemed cool. Seemed great. I visited and I really liked it, and then again I went there and it was hell. Everyone I met, including myself, it felt like Sarah Lawrence made us into the 15-year-old versions of ourselves, which is awful. I could make an entire video solely about evil Sarah Lawrence stories, but alas, that is not what this video is about. So I'll simplify. The social scene is awful, and I'm not talking parties. Parties are whatever. People just smoke weed and there'll be like one, bottle of vodka, whatever. Professors make no effort to really get to know their students or help students get to know each other. Sarah Lawrence is not a public university, so the majority of people going there are from out of state. You gotta get your students to know each other. You gotta get them to know each other. You're gonna need to do that. Students, there's also just a huge bullying culture, which I could tell some of my own stories about, but I don't want to go back to that hell, and some of the stories aren't mine to tell. It's bad, though. It's bad. Also, the classes were much easier than high school. I thought, I'm taking a college-level literature class, this will be great. It was so easy. It was so easy to the point that I was bored and didn't go to class, which, my bad, it shouldn't have done that. Also, my mental health was awful, so what you gonna do? And I was getting bullied, so what you gonna do? It's weird to have college-level literature classes where the books itself are easier than high school, where it's like, I understand this instantly, but then you're reading 200 to 400 pages a week. That's on top of other reading, obviously. That feels like a lot. Going off of the bullying thing, it's also incredibly cliquey. We probably could have deduced that. My biggest concern, though, is how Sarah Lawrence spends their money. It became clear to me, the longer I was there, that this was not a prestigious university or college in the slightest. Rather, they put more of their focus not on upkeeping current buildings, such as the major black mold problems in the new dorms. I have a friend of a friend who lived in one of the new dorms, which really just means it was built in the 1960s or 1970s, who reported black mold in the bathrooms. The college paid for their housing, but didn't move them and didn't do anything about the black mold. That's going to be a problem. There's also a much bigger focus on a large freshman class than student retention. There are probably at least 10 people I can name from my year who ended up leaving. At least. That's just people I can name. That's just people whose names I knew. That is part of the reason there is such a big housing issue, because you have guaranteed housing when you're a freshman, and there's pretty much guaranteed housing when you're a sophomore when you live in Hale House. There are a lot of buildings that should not be dorms, but are, because they're like, if we get a big freshman class, then we get money. Ooh, which doesn't work when a big part of your student body ends up leaving. Here's the thing. Bronxville is one of the most expensive suburbs in the United States. New York City is also incredibly expensive. Sarah Lawrence College is incredibly expensive to attend. You need to have guaranteed housing for all of your students if you want to be able to keep having students. Crystal Collins Judd, who's the president, moved out of her house on campus, and it's going to be turned into dorms. I'd heard that it was going to become freshman dorms. Don't know if that's true. The majority of housing is freshman housing. There are a lot of the dorms on Sarah Lawrence are single rooms, and then it'll be single, and a bathroom that you share. There were so many singles in the old dorms that became doubles because of how large the freshman class was my year. They boasted, like, this is our biggest freshman class ever. That's not good. That's not a good thing. Why are you admitting that many people? I have not heard of anyone being rejected from Sarah Lawrence. I've heard of acceptances and wait lists. That's it. They want students to be there. They don't really care if you stay or not, which is a problem. Also, there are not nearly enough academic resources for what you're paying. My high school tuition was cheaper, and we got more academic journal subscriptions and more just regular journalism subscriptions. We had digital access to the New York Times and the Star Tribune, which is like the Twin Cities newspaper. And we had better food. And it was included in tuition. Oh, but Sarah Lawrence, there's housing included. Did we hear the black mold? Did we hear the black mold thing? Did we hear how they're making single dorms into doubles? I fear they don't know what they're doing with their money. They're pretty much every year, Crystal Collins Judd is like, we're adding something on, new building. Girl, what about the current buildings? What about the current ones? What about the black mold problem? What about those? I've seen dorms plenty of times on my college tours. And I've never seen a landlord special quite like Sarah Lawrence. And I've lived under landlord housing before, and it wasn't that bad compared to Sarah Lawrence dorms, which were, Anyway, I have more. Next, part of why Sarah Lawrence says, we're so expensive because of conferences. Conferences are one-on-one time with your professors to work on a project because they don't have tests really. You do projects. All of the professors I had, and many of the professors my friends had, did not give a shit about conference. They didn't guide you. They weren't helpful. And there was no connection. Some also just don't schedule them as often as they need to. My photography professor didn't. He was 80 years old and said I didn't have depression and I was just defiant. Guess there's no longer duality of man. I'm both. Thank you. I'm infamously defiant. I know this, but I'm also depressed. You can be both. Girl, you can be both. Again, if anyone wants me to make a whole story on Sarah Lawrence, I can. I can make a whole video if people want it, but that's what I have to say there. I hate it. Awful, awful place. Also, I want to talk about part of why I think the bullying culture exists there, because one of the things I was looking for in a college was a majority queer community, which I understand my point for that. Given my background, makes complete sense that I was looking for majority queer community type of college. But here's the thing. I think about palatability a lot, and that was one of the issues at Sarah Lawrence, was that you had all these queer people coming from different places around the country who had homophobic experiences, whether it was blatant or more sly, they had experienced it. And so there was this sort of training internally to, well, if I just try to be more palatable and more straight, then no one will bully me and I'll live a great life. Which, I'm going to say right now, if you are a queer person watching this, or even if you're not queer, and you've been picked on before for being different or whatever, trying to be palatable and fit in won't save you. There will be something else people will find because they can tell. I'm sorry, people can tell. When you're different, they know. It is so much more powerful and freeing to celebrate that part of yourself than to push it away. And many of the people of Sarah Lawrence College don't have that comprehension. So therefore, if you are a more visibly queer person, such as myself, you're more likely to be pushed out of groups. And two people could do very similar things, which did happen. And the more unpalatable queer person will be more socially ostracized and punished for their actions within, the social setting. I'm not talking within administration, than the more palatable queer person. That's just how it is. People have not gotten out of this, we're not in a strictly heteronormative place now. And so they still are trying to be like, but I can't be friends with this unpalatable person because then I'll get hurt. You're at Sarah Lawrence College, you're all gay, grow up. Midwest. I visited way more colleges in the Midwest simply because I am from the Midwest. Starting off with Winona State University. If I did so much as applied to Winona State, I think my grandma and I would have started a fight. She was the one who toured Winona State with me, and if you do so much as mention the city of Winona, Minnesota, she has to bring up their dorms and how they looked like jail cells. So, do with that what you will. It's a public university with a large student population in a small town in Minnesota. There is, despite the, sort of jail cell dorms, they do give you a computer after you graduate. You pick a computer when you go in. There's like two types of computers you can pick, and then they let you keep it after graduation, which is nice. That's nice as hell. I think they have a good nursing school? I don't know. Didn't apply. It seems like it's a really good college if you peaked in high school and you really value that as a part of yourself. Like, yeah, I peaked in high school and I'm proud of that. Then I think Winona State University is the school for you. But if you're not that way, I would consider literally anywhere else. I also toured 2 colleges in one day in Northfield, Minnesota, which were St. Olaf College and Carleton College. St. Olaf is fine. I know people who go there and absolutely adore it. It just wasn't for me. It's in a small college town, and it's a liberal arts school, and has a film program and an education minor. So, yeah, I visited. I didn't apply, but I looked at it, and it was fine. Carleton College, I preferred greatly over St. Olaf. The tour guides clearly really, really loved the school. It's in the same town as St. Olaf, Northfield. It's a liberal arts school. And I really liked it. For a while, it was my top college, but you do have to come to terms with yourself and realize when you won't be accepted to a school, and so there's not really a huge point in applying. Okay, Lawrence University. This one is in Wisconsin, and I did not visit, but heard really good things about it. They have an incredible music program. If you want to do music, look into Lawrence. I've heard, again, just really great things about them. They have a conservatory as part of their program. It's a liberal arts school. I met with some of the admissions team, and they're just such kind people who are clearly really passionate about their school. They have both a film major and an education minor, which is a big part of why I applied. I got a scholarship as well. Like with Montana State, I looked to try to figure out how much it was. I don't remember. I couldn't find it. I, again, like with all the other colleges, applied early action. They got back to me super fast, and they're not a rolling admissions college, but they got back to me within like a month, which is awesome. Because I want to say I applied in like September, October. Heard back from fast. Lovely. Now on to Ohio, where I toured 2 colleges. The first one being Denison University. Denison just wasn't for me. Similar to St. Olaf. It's a great college. It just wasn't for me, which is fine. It's in a really, really small town. That was a big part of why I didn't end up applying. It was smaller than I knew could exist and still have a college within it. I didn't get super big college town vibes from it, but I also did tour during this summer, so I'm super aware of that. There's also just more Greek life than I wanted. Another college that I both toured and applied to is Ohio Wesleyan. Ohio Wesleyan is fine. Fine in the sense that, like, I clearly preferred it over St. Olaf and Denison because I did apply, but I don't think I would have gone. There were too many colleges that were more appealing to me than Ohio Wesleyan for me to have picked it. If you've done college tours, you'll probably know by now that they're oftentimes kind of clusters, the campuses are, where, okay, dorms are here, and there's also, academic buildings around and stuff. So if you have okay, let's say this is your dorm, right? And you have a class here, and then you have a class here. But you can have time in between to stop at your dorm so it doesn't feel like such a trek. That is not how Ohio Wesleyan works. The academic buildings are all here. Then there's a stretch, and then there's all the dorms, which isn't great, in my opinion. That would get tiring after a while, I think. Also because I toured in early August of 2023, I want to say, and it was hot. It was a hot, humid day. And being from the Midwest, that's not just going to stop all of a sudden in September. So I don't know what it's like to go there during September and May because it gets so hot. There was also an astonishing amount of buildings that didn't have air conditioning, including the library. The library didn't have air conditioning. That alarms me in a very real way. That being said, it's in a really nice area. It's a liberal arts college. Again, like the other colleges I applied to, film major, education minor. I got a $22,000 per year scholarship. That's good. They did, however, even after I withdrew my application, once I knew I was going to go to Sarah Lawrence, they kept sending me shit. They sent me merch in the mail. They kept emailing me. I don't know if Montana State did as well. I think it was really just Ohio Wesleyan kept emailing me, which makes me want to go there even less. Thank you. And that is all of the colleges I applied to and or visited. Before I get into what I was looking for this time around, I want to talk about what stats were added on from not only graduating high school, but having a bit of college. In college, I got a B level photography and an A- in college level literature. Keep in mind for both of those that I skipped a lot of class due to my depression, and I still got pretty good grades. I got a Media Arts Award from my high school, and I was a thespian when I graduated, and I also just had a stronger portfolio after graduating. When I've done more, after graduating high school, when I've done more film projects and I've written more, I'm gonna have a stronger portfolio. I'm a firm believer that if you do any sort of writing, any sort of art, anything creative, make a portfolio, put it on your college applications. So what was I looking for this time around? I was looking for a conservatory-based program because I'm someone where, maybe we caught on to this when I was talking about Sarah Lawrence. When I know what I'm going to do as a career, when I'm really, really passionate about film, I have short films on this YouTube channel if you want to watch them or whatever, which would be super cool, but you don't have to or whatever. I realized that I don't want to have to take all these general education requirements when I know it's not going to really benefit me in my career, especially when I am paying out so much money for it. I want to spend my money and know it'll be able to come back to me. I don't want to spend money and be like, okay, well, that's gone down the drain. And I want education for a job and for workplace connections. Art schools and conservatory programs aren't just for learning, it's also for making connections with peers and more professional connections. I don't want to just go get an education to, explore. Oh, but what if you want to do science? I did science in high school, and I like it as a hobby. I don't like it as a career. Does that make sense? I also, notably, am not looking for a majority queer community this time around. Partially for the reasons I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Sarah Lawrence, but also because Sarah Lawrence was formerly an all-women's college, and even though it's not an all-women's college anymore, it's still majority women. I don't know if I met more than one or two cis straight guys. I never thought I would miss cis straight guys. I thought, oh, it'll be nice to be without them. I started to miss them, and I still kind of do. And so, yeah. That's not on my list anymore. From everything I've given you, what did I learn that I want you to learn? All in all, take a gap year. That's sort of the overall thing I learned. I thought pretty early on into my college experience, damn, I should have taken a gap year. And my reasoning was for mental health, but I do think everyone should take a gap year. Unless you're mega rich and fully know what you want to do as a career. Take a gap year. Because, one, you can work. I think that's a big part of it. You can work more hours than you could in high school and, put yourself into the workforce a little bit and save up money for college. And also, a big thing I've realized is pretty much every teenager I've ever met, within late middle school and high school, isn't super close with their family. Sort of the, I'm gonna be in my room and be on my phone thing. It's really nice to have grown out of that and be able to have more time with my family and not be in high school. Knowing that I'm able to have time with my family before I move out of the house and live on my own is something that I really value. I know not everyone has great relationships with their family, but if you're someone who wants to have a greater relationship with their family or just wants to spend more time, I really recommend a gap year. I also don't think Ivy Leagues are as big of a deal as they need to be. It's really a group of selective colleges that have a sports, that do football together. That's really what the Ivy League is. And for some people, they have great experiences, but it's also important to mention that the Ivies are much more catered to master's students and PhD students. You don't need to be spending so much money when you don't know what you want to do as a career on an Ivy, when you could go to an Ivy or a school like an Ivy, like the University of California system schools, for your master's or your PhD. You can spend money there if that's something you want to do. I think that they're overrated deeply. I think that if you don't know what you want to do as a career, go to community college. And I mean that. It's going to be cheaper. You're still going to get really good experiences. You get to spend time at home before you move out. I know some people are like, I'm just itching to get out. And that's how I felt my senior year of high school. And then I came back and I realized, came back from New York and I realized that there is something that I missed about where I'm from, that I do want to get to know it more intimately outside of high school and before I end up leaving the country. I want to get to know where I live more. I think I also learned, sort of as I've mentioned a bit throughout this video, that teamwork really matters to me, and collaborativeness. One of the things that I wish I had considered in my initial college search was, what's the relationship between students? I focused a lot on, what about faculty and students, administration faculty, what are those relationships like? But what about just between students? Because I think sometimes, at least for me and my friends and peers in high school, a lot of, well, I want to go to college of sports. I don't want to go to college of sports. And that was a lot of how it was looked at, of, well, what archetype school do you want to go to? Artsy, academic, sports. What's your archetype? But I don't think that matters a whole lot. I think it matters of, do the students support one another? I know with Denison I mentioned that I wasn't super into the Greek life, and that's why I didn't apply. That being said, I'm not an anti-Greek life person. There are a lot of people who get incredible things out of Greek life, and there's connection made through there. That's what I've really learned, I would say. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions for me, feel free to comment. I also have a Twitter and a Tumblr, and now an Instagram that I don't really post on, but I might post on more. I don't know how to make quippy reels and stuff. I don't know how to do that. Anyway, thank you for watching, my fine feathered friends, and I'll see you in another one later. Bye bye!